Hello, everyone. We are live and ready. It is Sunday night, and it is, I don't even know what number Brown Girls in the Rain book club this is, but today's book club is about, I don't have the book. Today's
I don't
book
have the
club
book
is
with me.
about Whale Rider by, say his name.
By Witi Ihimaera.
Also, how rude of me. We are your hosts. I'm Anika, that's Sharanja, and we are Brown Girls in the Rain. Now, before we get started, Sharanja, you have something to open?
Oh,
Your
you want me
packet?
to do it now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
We'll we'll open it before we get into it all.
All right. Next slide. Thank you for letting me borrow this book. By the way, I'm excited.
It's a great book.
This is going to be my indigenous read of the month. Although I am reading this graphic novel too.
Oh, I got the graphic novel here.
Yeah. I got the library copy. It's like it's an ensemble of stories, right?
Yeah, and actually, because this is many different authors. One of the authors in this is actually the author of our next book club's book, Catherine
The what?
Vermette.
Say his
Hey,
name again.
Divvy.
Hi, Divvy.
I was just telling Sharanja. Well, Sharanja's reading this book as well, and I just got this yesterday. And it's an indigenous book. Different art. It's a graphic novel. Different artists write about it. And it's actually about the history of Canada through the indigenous lens. And Strand is currently opening her package that I gave her and told her to wait till this stream to watch. Divvy already knows what it is because I showed her.
Oh my god. I love it. I love it. This is amazing.
Read the note. Wait, put it back up, Shanja.
We have our own merchandise. This is going to be like what we're going to be wearing the next time we do this. Oh my god.
Yeah, read the note.
Obviously. Yeah. 100%. Oh my gosh. Thank you.
We got limited 2 of 2.
We're legit now. We're legitimate. Oh my god.
And it's perfect for the weather now because it's starting to get chilly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I have to ask you questions about how you did this.
What do you mean? I made the logo when I made the logo originally for this, and then I just went and got it done. Like
You
I
make
took
it
it to
sound
a
so
guy
simple.
to embroider it because I'm like, we're more legit if it's embroidered.
Yeah. I like
Also,
the fact that we have a
well,
logo.
our logo was supposed to be like a gradient of
Mhm.
brown, but that he
Yeah.
couldn't do the gradient, so I did the umbrella to match me, and then this part to match you.
Yeah. I feel represented. I feel seen. I feel seen. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm definitely wearing this the next time we're doing this.
Don't lose it in your stuff.
I won't. I promise. I won't. Oh my gosh. Okay. Now back to our book. So yeah, we read Whale Rider by Witi Ihimaera. Anika, do you want me to do the summary or did you want to do the
Yeah,
summary?
go ahead.
Okay. So Whale Rider is set in Wangara, which is a small village on the North Island of New Zealand. The story is centered on a young Maori girl within the ages of, I would say she's 12 years old, around that age. Her
Say like
name
11,
is
12.
Kahu. For those who don't know, the Maori people are the indigenous people of New Zealand. So the tribe that Kahu is born into, they're a very patriarchal tribe in that only men can become the leaders of the tribe. Only men can become chiefs. So within every generation of the tribe, the oldest son of the current chief usually becomes the future leader of the tribe. Now, all of this is essentially disrupted when Kahu is born. So she is born to the son of the current chief, and she's the first female that is born in that family in generations. And this causes a lot of strife between Kahu and her grandfather in the fact that now he feels that he has no heir, and he's so patriarchal to the extent that he's not going to hand over his leadership to a female. He just won't do it. And he goes on to ignore Kahu, even though Kahu grows to love him so much, and she really does crave his attention. He just has no use for a granddaughter. He pays her no attention, and even though Kahu doesn't have the love of her grandfather, she does everything she can to get that attention from him. So in her struggle to gain her grandfather's love and attention, it's revealed that she has a special gift that was thought to be lost to the Maori people. And her special gift is the fact that she can communicate with whales. So this gift comes into handy later on in the book when something happens, like an environmental event happens in the fact that whales start to beach themselves near her community, and whales play a significant role in the culture of Maori people. They represent a symbol of spiritual growth and personal change. And when these creatures start to beach themselves, it causes pandemonium within the Maori people. It's a very, very devastating event. And Kahu plays a very, very important role in the saving and rescuing of these whales. And that's my summary.
Also, Kahu was named after like a figure in their, like a major figure. Like basically, she was named after their one forefather, like the one who started it all.
So Kahu is named after.
They named her that.
Kahu is named after Kahutia Tarangi, who in Maori culture is the first Maori to step foot on New Zealand. And he is known for many of his escapades in the fact that he actually escaped death on the back of a whale. So he's known as the original whale rider. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wanted to point out another fact: the fact that Kahu was named after this original whale rider, but even the fact that her being named this caused another note of contention between her and her grandfather, in the fact that he didn't want this name to be given to a female grandchild, because for some reason he thought that that would have been an insult because females are the weaker sex.
Even though his own wife is a very headstrong individual.
Yeah, his own wife is very headstrong. I going back to saying, Maori, like the Maori culture, like Maori tribes are usually very matriarchal. Like the women are usually at the forefront of the tribe. So when I was doing research on this book, apparently there are still Maori tribes where they are patriarchal in the fact that only men can become leaders. So this story is about one of those patriarchal tribes. Mm-hmm. But that is not the norm.
And let's see what else can be said. In the book, I'd say there's like basically two perspectives that it's told by. So the first perspective, which the book starts off with, is the whale, which this whale is the whale that the original Kahu rode. And as you know, whales live a very, very long life. So this same original whale is still living when the events of our story is going on. And then the other narrator is Kahu's uncle, Rauri. Hello, Gregory.
Hi, Gregory.
Our boy Greg read the book, or had the book read to him, so he can partake in discussion.
Good job, Greg.
Yeah. So then the other person was his uncle Rauri, her uncle Rauri, who basically was there her whole life. What I liked about the book and the relationship between her uncle and her was that from the very beginning, their grandmother said, "You are her guardian because you have buried her placenta into the ground, and you're one of the only people who knows where it is buried."
Mm-hmm.
So like that's a very like spiritual event
It's a
that
very cultural,
plays.
traditional
Yeah.
relationship.
And in the book, he was the one that would take her to school
Mm-hmm.
when she came to live there permanently. He was basically kind of like a father figure to her when her own father was not around because
Yeah.
he was at work.
Yeah. He definitely was a father figure. Like, he was someone who definitely looked out for her in ways that a father normally should, or a grandfather normally should. So that was one of my favorite things about the book, their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say, I think one of the things I liked most about this book was Nanny Flowers. I like the contrast of her and Paka. Paka?
Yeah.
Koro Paka.
Koro Apparina.
Yeah, Koro Apparina, who is the grandfather in this book. And the fact that he's like very he's very sexist in the way
And he's
that
like
he
very rough.
talks. He's very rough, and then she just doesn't take his shit.
Mm-hmm.
She's not afraid to say, "I'm gonna divorce you. I'm gonna leave
She
you.
says
I
it
can
every
find
day,
someone better."
multiple times.
And I'm just like, I like the fact that there's like comedy sewn into the book as well. Like, it's not the tone is not very serious, even though the subject matter is serious. The tone is still very light.
One of my favorite comedic scenes was when Kahu was a baby and she was in the room with her paka, and he was talking about like in the past about something biting, and the next thing you know, she bit his
She bit
toe.
his toe.
That was one of my
Yeah.
favorites.
Um. So my first question is gonna be, what did you think about the relationship between Kahu and her grandfather? Um, the fact that he wasn't really about showing her any love, like he was more focused on being a chief for the tribe and making sure that their tribe's culture survives into the next generation. He didn't really pay her any attention. And the fact that she had love from other places, but this was the one person who she wanted it from the most.
Hmm.
So, what did you think
Even
about that?
even down to her oral report for like she had an oral thing and she won an award for it, and she invited her whole family, and it was about her koro, and he wasn't there.
Yeah,
He was there.
she wrote a speech
Hmm.
about the Maori people. I think she even did it in the Maori
Yeah,
language, and
probably.
she won a local award for it. And there was a school assembly being held in her honor, and the fact that she wrote this speech she wrote this speech for her grandfather, so her grandfather would like appreciate her, and he didn't even show up to the assembly, and it broke her heart. But she still didn't. There was something that she said it right after that scene where she said, where Nanny Flowers was just like, don't pay him any attention, like he's just a pucka, like, which is like how they say bugger, like he's just a pucka, like don't care about him. And she's just like, oh, it's not pucka's fault that I was born a boy, that I was born a girl.
Hey, Sean.
Hey, Sean.
But yeah,
Yeah. So the fact that like she's almost blaming herself for the fact that she was born a girl, and it kind of reminded me of like a toxic relationship at this point.
it definitely was, because it's even like no matter how much she tried, she was always the top of her class. She was always better than the boys at everything culturally. And regardless, it's because she was a girl that she was just pushed aside. She wasn't even allowed into the school. She had to learn these things by standing outside of the school or like peeking into the
And
window.
what did you think of the fact that she had to do the utmost to gain her father's attention, her grandfather's
Right.
attention? The fact that like she had to overachieve in order to get this man to love her in the end. So what do you think that says about women in today's world where they're going to school or where they're in work and they have to do more than their male counterparts to receive any type of recognition?
It's a sad reality.
It's a true reality.
Greg, about you just chilling. Aren't you eating? Greg just
Um,
came from work.
well, thanks for coming, Greg. Thanks. I know you're probably tired after work, but thanks for showing up.
and this TC is off from work. Lucky
Hi,
duck.
TC. Oh, yeah. And then my next question would have been, so in the book, there's a good section of the book that's set in Papua New
New
Guinea.
Guinea. Yeah.
This is when
Maori.
Uncle Rauri decides that he wants to spend some time away from New Zealand and see the world. So he first goes to Australia, and then he makes friends with a guy named Jeff who owns a plantation in Papua New Guinea, and he ends up going with Jeff to the plantation in Papua New Guinea, and he definitely sees the state of like racism in that country, in the fact that even though he's friends with Jeff, his family doesn't treat him like a guest in their home. Like they're very I don't want to say like they're not exactly racist towards him, but they don't treat him like he's one of their own.
I mean, the prejudice. The thing is, they are racist. It's just not um in your face. It's not outward.
Hmm. No, it's not outward. It's very subtle.
Yeah,
And the fact that like sometimes they'll go to like
because like I would say like it's like microaggressions, but yet it's a little bit more macro.
it's
It's
more
not,
macro.
huh?
It's more macro, I'd say.
That's what I'm saying. It's like a microaggression, but it's a little bit more macro, but not macro in the sense that it's just like in your face, like full on KKK.
No. But
But it's like because it's like when when Jeff's mom was talking to other people, like she tried to like not include him,
mhm,
not to include Rari, or she would just be like, "Oh, you know, Jeff always bringing home strays."
always bring home strays, yeah. You don't like it his whole relationship with them doesn't really come to a head until they hit one of the locals
Hmm.
on like he's a local
At
but he
night.
works for them. Bernard. They hit Bernard, who was I think their employee, at night on like in the middle of a road, and they just drive off. Like they don't take him to the hospital or anything. They don't check up on him. I think it was the mother who said like to Jeff, don't stop. You got to go cuz you don't know if his tribe is going to come and kill us for doing this to him.
Hmm.
But like why would you assume that? Why would you assume that they would come and hurt you? Come and hurt you if it was an accident? So they're playing to an assumption about their race.
It's all back into stereotypes and stuff.
Now, I know you watched the movie after reading the book. So, what was like? What did you prefer more, the movie or the book?
I liked I liked different aspects. So
Mm-hmm.
for the book, I liked how we were able to go more in depth into Rowry, and we actually had like the story of the whale because in the movie, the whale story is basically cut out altogether.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like you see no communication between between the whales or
Mm-mm.
like the story of the original um Kahu. You don't see
It's
that in the movie.
it's all done in narration, but they don't show you what actually happened.
No. And what I do like about the movie though is how you're able to see more about more okay. The confusing part is that in the movie Kahu is Pi. So
Yeah.
in the movie you get to see Pi and her basically her evolution, or like what she's feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And what I also liked about the movie, as you had mentioned before the stream started, was the relationship between her and her grandfather. Because you can see that it is rocky at points when it comes to her being a girl and not being allowed to do certain things. But outside of that, like they did have a good relationship where that it showed that he cared.
Yeah.
In the book, it didn't seem like he wanted her at all. Like it's like she was born a girl. I don't want a girl. Why are you
Mhm.
here? Stop bothering me. She should never be here. Like she
That's
should have never been a girl.
that's the reason why I was so confused as to why she was chasing after her grandfather's love in the book, because he showed her no warmth at all.
Like
But
no more.
in the movie, I saw a reason why she would want to, because in the movie, versus in the book, she actually grows up with her grandparents. So her grandfather is more of a father figure to her than her actual father.
Yeah.
And he does have moments where he shows her kindness in the fact that like he takes her to school. They do spend quality time together, but then he also goes very frigid towards her in the movie, in the fact that like she can't inherit the leadership from him, so he has no use for her. So there are scenes in the book where in the movie where he starts like a Maori school for the local boys,
Yeah.
and in that school they teach them language, cultural traditions, how to do like the haka and traditional fighting styles, and she's not allowed to participate at all. I think there was a scene where he was teaching them something outside of the school, and she was there, and she wanted to stand up front with the boys, but he saw her, and she's like, "Kahu, you're not allowed to stand up front. You have to either go to the back or sit out." And it was very representative of the fact that she's trying hard to become someone that her grandfather could admire, but he literally doesn't see what she could become if he had only paid her attention.
Well, in that same scene, he said, "Pi, go to the back," and she sat there. He
Yeah,
said
she just sat there.
he said it like 3 times. He got up it and he was like yelling at her, and she still sat there. He's like, then leave. So then she just walked away slowly. So at
Hmm.
least she had enough conviction in herself to not like give in and go to the back. She's like, well, okay, you don't want me, I'm leaving.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
something else I liked about the movie was that we were able to get more insight into the boys that he was training. Like
Hmm.
that one specific boy who seemed like she was friends with, who she caught smoking outside, and then how he seemed to be like to become like the top boy that her
Hmm.
grandfather attached to.
Hmm.
And then he did well, and he had his dad come to see him present something, and the dad like left. So it just showed that like he himself was just looking for somebody
For
to like
validation.
be his father figure,
Hmm.
because it's his own. He told his father, he's like, I'll see you tonight. He's like, no, you probably won't see me for a few days.
Yeah, I did like that they developed the other characters more, but it seems like they so in the book, a lot of the things that the grandfather does in the movie for Kahu,
Kahu.
the uncle is the one who does like all the caring for her in the book. So it seems like they diminished the role of the uncle in the movie and
Yeah.
gave a lot of his scenes to the grandfather.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think.
And as you said before, like Raori is just a loaf of bread. He
He's
just
just a
makes
loaf of bread in the movie. Like he just
this big soft character who's
big,
just
yeah, big soft character who
fluffy.
doesn't really do anything until he teaches her how to fight.
Yeah. And then he's then trying to lose weight.
Yeah. I was kind of upset by that because I really did like the character in the book. So I like both the book and the movie, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
It's not one is better than the other for me. I like them both for different reasons.
Like at some point they seemed it it seems so different that I felt like, you know how obviously like there's a story of Snow White or there's the story of Cinderella, but like there's like the Disney version and then there's like other versions. So it's the
Mhm.
same story, but it's just like so vastly different.
Mhm.
That's what it felt like. Just like
Like
it shared some points, but like
share
two
some
different
points.
stories.
Like, but the general core of the story is still the same in the fact that it's about a little girl who saves the future of her tribe.
Hmm.
There's a scene that remains the same in the book and in the movie, in the fact that there's a whole scene about the whales who are suddenly beaching themselves as in they're they're coming up onto the shore and they're not able to swim back into the water. And like I mentioned this before, but whales have a significant meaning in Maori culture. Um, and the fact that these spiritual animals are beaching themselves on the shore, it's a cause for a lot of chaos within the Maori community in the book and the movie. And I think it's on the Maori community to actually go and save the whales, as in like pushing them back into the water. But no matter what they do, the whales keep coming back onto the shore. It's almost as if they're trying to kill themselves,
Like they've given up.
and like they've given up hope. And in a weird way, I thought the fate of the whales was tied to the fate of the Maori because there's so many things mentioned throughout the book that the Maori tribe is trying to do to preserve their culture. And the fact that one of the facts was being that they started this Maori school to teach the boys how to speak their language, how to pass on their traditions, their cultural beliefs, and the fact that they're trying so hard to preserve their future, but sometimes you can do everything you can to preserve your language, but parts of it still chips away
Yeah, because you're not practicing, or
because
like
you're not practicing it.
there's a huge difference between learning and knowing a language from birth and then learning it later
Hmm.
and who you're speaking it to, because then you won't learn like slang or stuff like that.
Hmm. And another thing, going back to the fate of the whales being tied to the fate of the Maori, it it's interesting when you think about the fact that this one person who they never paid attention to was the person that actually saved their community.
Yeah. Well, I
So
mean, some of them knew it was always going to happen, like
some of them knew, but the
Danny
most
Flowers and Rauri.
and Marie, but these are all just like side characters. I would say that the most important person who needed to figure this out was the grandfather because the grandfather was the leader of the tribe.
And then you know the scene where both in the book and in the movie where he takes his necklace off and drops it in the water, hoping that the boys would go get it, and none of the boys get it.
Hmm.
And then she later goes back, and Kahupai goes back, and she's able to retrieve it. But
Hmm.
then both Rauri and Nanny Flowers like decide to not tell Koro.
Hmm.
If they told him, he would deny it and just brush it off. But at least if they
Or
told him,
he would have gotten really mad at Kahu because there was another scene where
yeah,
he punished her for actually trying to learn how to fight with the Maori style.
he punished her for beating his top boy.
Yeah. So maybe they thought he would have done the same in this case too, for trying to encroach upon a space where she doesn't belong in his eyes.
Even though after the boys didn't find it, he was so sad because
Hmm.
obviously that's like a family heirloom
Hmm. It's a family heirloom. I think there was a scene near the end of the
movie
movie where she
where she's wearing it.
where no, well, I'm talking about the scene where Kahu ends up going off with the whale, with
Hmm.
the last whale, and Nanny Flowers has the necklace in her hand, and she turns around to give it to Koro, and Koro asks her who
Which
who got
boy?
this, and she said, "What do you mean who got this?
She's like, you know who got it,
You know who got this. You shouldn't even have to ask this." And it's
and then
only then that
she
he
connected
figures
it.
out like like what Koro should have meant, what Kahu should have meant to him as a granddaughter.
Yeah, But at the end scene where she's wearing it, you know me and my Moana. I got Moana vibes straight there because she's wearing it and she's doing the calls. She's telling people how to row and where to go, and she's like basically leading the boat and leading their whole tribe. I'm like,
I think
yes,
some of the actors from Whale Rider were actually in Moana. Like they voiced it.
interesting.
Yeah, interesting. Well, it's like Moana's based off
Yeah,
Polynesian culture, like
yeah,
Hawaiian and Maori, right?
yeah.
Because I was thinking, what's the name of the Rock's character in
Polynesian princess.
Maui?
Yeah, Maui.
Yeah, so Maui is a figure in Maori and Hawaiian cultures. Like
Yeah,
Maori people are like people who are descended from an island that's off the coast of Hawaii.
yeah,
Don't make me say the name, but I can't say the name of the island. But it's like an island that's near to Hawaii, and they had gotten on a boat and actually traversed across the ocean and founded New Zealand.
mm-hmm.
So that's like their origin story. So there would be like crossovers and like same similar gods, similar
Yeah,
stories, right?
yeah. I
I'm
love
trying to
them. I love all those things. At one point, I was teaching myself Hawaiian.
Hawaiian. Is it like what's the name of their actual language?
It's Hawaiian.
Just Hawaiian?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
I
because
didn't
I know there
practice
are
in a long time
similarities.
though.
Like Hawaiians have their own version of the haka. Same with like Maori, the Maori people. Like there's similarities and overlaps, but the language is different.
Yeah,
Mm,
it might just be like they might have some shared words, but
mm. A lot of people don't know that New Zealand has its own indigenous community.
how can people not know that every land has their own indigenous people?
People won't know, and people certainly wouldn't know what the name of the indigenous community would be.
They might not know the name, but you should know that every place has indigenous people.
Not necessarily like the way that certain things are taught in school. It's like they teach you that like the land was empty and then settlers came to populate the land, but they don't necessarily tell you that there were already people there.
Well, that's why you need to think critically.
Well, if you're just a kid and you're learning social studies, you're not gonna think like that.
Their parents don't have critical thinking. It's on a parent to properly teach your child. Like, did you see that thing I posted here in Canada, out in BC? This woman who is Indigenous was appalled because her children came home with homework saying to list 5 good things that came out of residential schools. 5 good things.
What school was this? And where in BC was this? That's
I have the
weird
name down somewhere, but I don't remember what it is.
because BC has a well-known
Exactly.
history of the residential school system.
British Columbia has a lot of Indigenous people, and it had a lot of residential schools.
That's why I tell you, like they don't do enough to teach like the individual stories of like people who survived the residential schools. Like I can't name one person off the top of my head, even though I know it was
People
bad.
do a trash job because do you remember learning about residential schools in elementary school? I don't.
No, that was something
Didn't
I had to like
expect that.
read about on my own.
I was learning a whole bunch of American history. Are we American? And that's the thing. Americans weren't learning about residential schools either.
Hmm.
They
And the
weren't
concept of
weren't
the
learning about
residential
how
school,
trash of a country they really are.
the concept of the residential school actually exists in a lot of countries, like in Canada, US, Australia, New Zealand, where they've taken like children from indigenous communities, put them in these schools to sort of um what's the word? Assimilate them into
Assimilate.
European culture. So
Yeah.
they weren't allowed to speak their language. They weren't allowed to practice their cultures. And because they were taken at such a young age and assimilated at a young age, it was fairly easy for them to forget.
Trust me, you forget that I'm doing an Indigenous certificate added onto my program. Let me
I did
school
not forget. I did not forget.
let me school you. So we had residential schools, which the last residential school to close in Canada was in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
That's since we've been born. But when residential schools started to be phased out, what did our beautiful Canadian government do? They started taking these children and putting them in foster care. And what happened is the 60 scoop. So in the late 50s to 60s, Canada started scooping these children off of the reserves and taking them from their families and putting them in foster care. But where were they putting these children in foster care? To white families. So these white families were fostering them and adopting them out, changing their names, not changing their language, totally like assimilating them so that they don't know anything about their indigenous roots, and raising basically brown skinned white people.
And
And of the
they're put
kids
in
who were adopted, they were in the system until they aged out at 16. And then at 16, they were left out on their own.
and they're put in an even more interesting spot because they don't have that connection to their culture anymore, but physically they don't look European. So if they go home,
So there's
they
some
don't
of them
connect to their
that
community, but if
that
they
will
go out
swear
into the world, they don't connect.
white.
Hmm?
I said there's some of them that could pass as white
Some
people.
of them, but not all.
No, no, no. Or even like a next complexity added to that were the children that were fostered and adopted out into French speaking
Mm-hmm.
like communities. So it's like now they also speak French, so they can't even connect with the other people who are English speaking because the majority of the country is English speaking over French.
Mm-hmm.
And there was the organization called AIM, which basically they were putting, like how they used to have like the African children and where you could like sponsor them or whatever. So with
Well,
AIM, they would put these children on TV and in catalogs basically to be adopted out. So some kids were being adopted out as far as to New Zealand from Canada.
mm-hmm.
And that's just insane.
That's
Because now
insane.
when they're adults and they're trying to like reconnect, it's really hard.
Yeah, but that's essentially the system winning.
And then how Canada has what is it? The reconciliation the Reconciliation Commission of Canada,
Mm-hmm.
where they're basically like having all these call of actions and they're getting reparations for the residential school survivors.
Mm-hmm.
The people of the 60 scoop were not included in that, even though they had a very similar situation.
Yeah, it's interesting that they wouldn't be included in that study.
Because they're saying that like in residential schools they were they had their culture taken away from them, their language, but they're being beat and sexually abused and stuff. But this is also happening in people's homes.
Mm-hmm. Send me the link for that study. I want to read it.
What study? This is a whole bunch of different things.
Oh, well,
Which
send me the
one?
link. Send me the link so I can read it.
I can send you some YouTube videos on it.
Yeah. Oh my
On
gosh,
on
that's
which
heartbreaking.
on residential schools or on the 60 scoop.
On the 60s scoop.
Okay, I got you.
You got me. You always got me. Um, yeah. So another point. It's very interesting that no matter what the topic,
CP.
um, my name is Sipatsa. It's a really good book. It talks about yeah. I'll definitely check that one. Sipatsa.
My name is
My name is Sipatsa. Um, when it comes to preserving culture, like preserving language is always at the forefront of each debate. Because I feel like out of everything, as long as you're able to speak like your mother tongue, then you'll always have a connection back to your roots. And it's always interesting when we talk about people assimilating, that's the first thing to go, always.
The language.
The language.
It's true, and like causes a lot of things that cause anxiety. Like I heard about this girl. She is from Trinidad, but she came to, I don't know if it was Canada or the States. I think it was Canada. She came to Canada when she was 5. So then she was in kindergarten class, and every day she'd be speaking, and like she'd be getting weird looks from the kids and the teachers, and the teachers would keep asking her to repeat herself. So then at one point she realized the reason was the way she was talking. So she started to speak like the rest of her class. Like she started speaking with a Canadian accent. But the thing is, forcing herself to speak in a way that she was not familiar or was not meant to speak, she then got a stutter. She started
Wow.
stuttering.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of saying like, "Good
Because it
morning,
created
Miss
anxiety.
Roberts," whatever, she'd be like, "Good morning, Miss Roberts. My name is Crystal."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So her trying to learn how to speak like the people around her, it caused her to develop anxiety.
Which I would have anxiety too, coming into a new place and then these people not understanding me.
Mm. Well, I've never felt that experience here, but I know when I went back to Sri Lanka a few years ago, I didn't want to speak I did not want to speak Tamil because the second I spoke it, I feel like I was speaking with my Canadian accent and it's already broken to begin with. So me opening my mouth was always done out of necessity and not to appear rude. But it always feels like so much mental stress, like you like before you even speak, it's just like, oh, I gotta say this right, or they're gonna make fun of me, or they're gonna say
Yeah.
something. And it's weird because Tamil's actually like my mother tongue. I think I spoke it before I went to school. I spoke it fully before I went to school, even though I could speak English, but I was only speaking Tamil at home. But then as I grew older, it just sort of fell away.
Yeah, because you speak English at school, which you're at school more than you are at home.
Hmm.
You speak English with your brothers.
Yeah, it's also the fact that I also speak English with my brothers and my cousins. Like none of us speak Tamil to each other.
Yeah, so it's just really your parents that you speak Tamil to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely being in Sri Lanka, I also developed a Sri Lankan accent when I was speaking English.
Divvy, you feel like you had the accent in high school still? You just came out of high school. Okay, no, you didn't really. But high school was like less than 10 years ago for you. Because high school was 10 years ago for me.
And it's sad that we actually have to regulate it too. Like something should just come naturally, and you shouldn't have to think about it.
I just say things, however, and then sometimes when I play stuff back, I'm like, Anika, why does it sound like you have an accent?
Yeah, yeah.
It,
Well,
the thing with me, I feel it's different because you know how like a lot of kids, like your parents are both from the same place, so you can get that accent down, or like you might have the accent, but my parents are from 2 different countries, so I
mhm,
feel like if I have an accent, it is very, it's neither. It's like my
mhm,
own because it's Canada mixed with them two.
mhm. And like certain English words I learned from my grandma, from my family. Like I learned from my parents. So they said it in their accent, and when I left the house and I said the word, I would say it with their accent because that's how I would assume it was said. And people would just give you this look like, what did you just say? Like vegetable. I used to
I
say it
was
as
just about to say that
vegetable.
because you always say about how I say vegetable.
I used to say
Vegetable?
it like
Vegetable?
vegetable. Or 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 my
Or how some people say condensed milk is condensed milk.
condensed milk, yeah.
Or a comforter, a
Com
comforter would be a comforter.
comforter. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with it. But people always have like a negative reaction when you don't speak the way that they think you should.
Or another thing, it's like the way with your accent, and you hear people saying something a certain way, then you think that it's said a different way. So like how the word is cupboard, but some people say covered,
Mm-hmm.
or um the word is navel, but people
Mm-hmm.
say navel,
Navel. Mm-hmm.
or bathe is bade. These are just
Immigrant.
things that I recognize in the Caribbean diaspora.
Just like going back into my childhood and thinking of all the things I didn't say the English way.
Or like I remember as a kid, I'd say Walmart.
Walmart.
I love
Yeah,
Walmart.
Walmart. Um, Another thing I wanted to say. I like the fact that they all have like Maori names in the book, and like the author doesn't like he doesn't take the easy way out and making it easy for us to pronounce. Like
Well,
he
except for Nanny Flowers.
except for Nanny Flowers, but I don't think that's her actual name. I think that's just like a nickname. But he doesn't give us the easy way out and like giving us easy Maori names to pronounce. Like he has like some long like Maori words, Maori names in this you can tell that even though it's like a book that everyone could read, it's for the Maori people.
Yeah.
Because there's like certain phrases in here that like he doesn't give like a translation for. It's just like automatically assume that the person is gonna know what they're saying,
Yeah.
right?
Like when it came to that part, I'm like, okay, Nika, take your time reading this. I know nobody's hearing me read this, but I don't want to butcher anyone's language. I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to say this as carefully as possible.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like he does a good job of what painting what matters to the Maori people in that they're people who are heavily connected to the land. They care about marine they care about the wildlife around them. They care about their people. It's like a very family driven community. Everyone looks out for each other, right? I feel like I got a good understanding of who the Maori people were just by reading this book. Or are. I shouldn't say past tense.
I did too. It's like a little insight,
Mm.
a step into a different culture.
Yeah. Trying to think, what other questions did I have? I know I had a couple questions. Oh, back to the book. So, do you think the story would have been different if the story was told by Kahu instead of her uncle? Because the whole story is told from her uncle's perspective, and she's just a character in the story, even though she's the main character. So, if we had gotten her perspective on everything, do you think it would have changed the story or how we felt?
Well, I mean, we got her perspective in the movie, so not really.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it may have been more. You wouldn't have gotten the world view
And it
if
would have
we
been a
had.
little different too, because in the book, remember, she wasn't living with her grandparents for a
Mhm,
portion. So
mhm.
seen her we would have seen like
Like
when
her
she
life
was
with
with her
her
mother's
parents.
family.
Mhm. But yeah,
I
having the
thought it would be
story
interesting
told.
seeing the difference in the tribes, because her
Mhm.
mother was of a different tribe than her
Yeah.
father.
Yeah. That goes back to what I was telling you with my assumption was that the Maori people were actually like very matriarchal in the fact that like women seem like they have as much power as the men do in their tribes. But I
Yeah.
guess this was like just like an exception to the rule. I listened to an interview that the author did with BBC, and he said that the reason why he chose to write from the perspective of Uncle Wariri was the fact that he didn't feel comfortable writing from like a female child or like a woman's perspective in the fact that like he doesn't want to write something that he doesn't feel like he has the right to,
Mhm.
in that he's a man, so he can tell you perspective, like he can tell you certain opinions from a man's perspective, but he wouldn't be able to do that from a child's perspective or a woman's perspective and have it feel genuine. So I really like the fact that he was very mindful of that, because you still have like a lot of writers who are, let's say, like they're white and they write from the perspective of a of a racialized person, and it doesn't always come off as feeling genuine.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Like, I feel like in both stories, her father could have been a bigger part.
Mm, yeah and no. Yes and no, but I feel like they in the story you could tell that he was grieving, and in his grief he couldn't be a proper father to her. Even though he was more of a father in the book, actually, because he did spend time with his child, but in the movie it was just like he up and left and found himself a new
Yeah,
girlfriend.
and then found a white girl and went and had a child
Yeah,
with her. Like a whole new,
he
start a whole new family.
like, and I think that also added to the stress of the grandfather in the movie, in the fact that his 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 son is now going to be with a European woman,
Non,
and
yeah,
he's probably not going to come back to New Zealand. He's probably going to go live permanently in Europe,
Germany.
in Germany. And so it only put more pressure on him to find a
And especially
suitable.
if the next child is going to be a son,
Mhm.
and the son not be raised in their culture.
Mhm. So yeah, it put more pressure on the grandfather to find someone who he thought would be suitable to be the leader of the tribe.
Because they touched on that briefly too, where obviously he had two sons, and his
Mhm.
first son, like, why wasn't he must have been training the first son to be the chief, but something went wrong that he decided no. And then also it was said that Rauri was the perfect, like, example, the perfect thing that could have been the future chief, but it's because of the birth order is
Yeah.
why they
Well,
didn't choose him.
I think it was going good for the first son up until his wife passed away, and I think in that grief he had to move away and sort of start over.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. The grandfather just had problems. He just had issues.
Major.
Oh, so do you think this story had an antagonist? Like, think of what you define as being like a villain or an antagonist in a story. Do you think that that exists within this story?
I would say that it was the grandfather, but, like, okay, the grandfather would be the closest thing to an antagonist, or maybe sexism. Sexism itself is what the antagonist was.
Yeah, I think the antagonist was more or less an
To create
idea
sexism, the idea of
of sexism, right? Like in terms of characters, I don't think any of them could be defined as a antagonist, in the fact that when you look at the perspective from the grandfather as well, like he's just trying to do his best to make sure his culture survives for the next generation. But the way
Mhm.
he went around, the way he went about it was wrong, but he didn't see it that way.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that, Greg, but you got to exactly what we were saying. And you too, TC.
Oh, there was an antagonist though. That white family from Papua New Guinea who
Yeah.
just hit someone and they left him on the road to die.
Yeah.
But also I want to say, like, the hierarchy of racism in that scene alone, the fact that like they, even though Rawiri is like a racialized person, he was still okay enough for them to invite into their home and stay with them. But the way that
Well,
they treated,
they didn't invite him, remember? He
well,
was
he came
Jeff's
with
roommate
Jeff.
and Jeff just brought him.
Jeff just brought him. But the fact is that they still allowed him to stay in the home. But the way they treated the locals, like the actual like
Yeah.
Papa people from Papua New Guinea, is like totally different. It's just like the hierarchy of like skin color. Like the further down you are, like the darker your skin is, like the worse, like the the less you mean to them in terms of like humanity.
Yeah, especially because Rari, can't even say his name now. Rari
Definitely a difficult one. Yeah.
Was working harder, laboring harder, and Jeff was just basically there to like try and help take over the family business.
I like that they
because
touched
his
upon the
father was
fact that
sick.
they touched upon the fact that like briefly like the rising nationalism within Papua New Guinea, like all the different tribes and different groups of indigenous people coming together and to sort of like overthrowing or beginning to overthrow the white settlers, because I think Papua New Guinea was originally colorism at work. Yeah, Papua New Guinea was originally like it was a Spanish colony, and then the local people were able to rise up and overthrow the Spanish government and instill their own government. I think they showed a piece of that in this book, but there were references, like there were parallels to their national uprising and what the people of what the Maori people in New Zealand were trying to do, but there were roadblocks in order for them to get there.
It's
Yeah,
true. That's why I know I'm low-key a villain, because I'm always right.
You're like a
I'm just playing.
yeah, you're like a marshmallow. You're not a villain.
A villain.
You're a marshmallow. You're the Pillsbury Doughs boy.
So that makes sense. If I'm the Pillsbury Dough girl and Greg is a cinnamon roll.
Yeah. Greg is just soft. He's like a softie. I don't think you heard me. Anika, I don't know if you remember this in the book, like, but one of the most heartbreaking scenes for me was when the whales start to beach themselves, and then you had like the group of like New Zealanders who came down to the beach and they were actually like taking apart the whales with their
They
knives.
started to cut the blubber and everything.
Yeah, they started to cut the blubber and just like skin them alive right there.
Because I
And
guess
I
they're
don't know,
trying
it
to
really
use
I
their
wasn't sure if this was
meat.
if these scenes were based off of like real life, but it seemed like that scene actually happened in real life. And the fact that like the Maori people were so saddened by this because this is like a religious symbol for them, right? But it's literally being killed in front of their eyes.
Baby, be out here throwing shade like it's sunny. What kind of emoticon is that? The first one. Is it the
It's like a
one?
middle finger. Okay, Anika, overall, what was your opinion about the movie and the book?
Good and good. Just
But,
different. As I said,
I don't know.
it's like a story with different perspectives. One story, different perspectives.
Different perspectives. Fun fact. So I found out that the girl who played Paikia in the movie, she was actually at the time the youngest person to ever be nominated for a Oscar for Best Actress until like Quvenzhané Wallace like 10 years later. Yeah, but she actually got nominated for an Oscar. She got nominated for an Oscar in that movie.
Interesting.
Yeah, but this was like 2001, 2002. Yeah, Keisha Castle Hughes.
That's a very white name.
Yeah, it is, but you'll find that there's a lot of indigenous people who have like European names, but they don't.
Yeah.
But that's just their name. Like there's a lot of like Sri Lankan and Tamil people who are walking around here with names like Donald and James and John. Like,
Oh yeah.
you know that
There's a
article
lot of
you sent me?
evidently there's a lot of Chinese too, like
Yeah,
that
I was gonna
article I
mention
sent.
that. Like Chinese people give like 3 names apparently, and usually one of those names is usually like an English name to help them acclimatize
Navigate
to.
the Western world.
Yeah.
but because of all the censorship in China and obviously like the language and stuff, a lot of their parents choose names that don't really like
They're
work.
English,
Like,
but they're not like actual names.
so like Rolex is
Rolex.
someone's name, or Gandalf.
I mean, Gandalf is a name if you like Lord of the Rings, it's a name. I know people who
Like
would be
the
down to
names
name their
they're
kids
looking
something like
for,
that.
like Susan, Jeffrey.
I just
Ellen.
didn't I just didn't like the fact that this girl is capitalizing off their need for an English name and making so much money off of them.
Millions.
Millions. And
But
she's
she's
giving them
doing a lot because she's at 67 cents per name, I think.
basic names. Like names they could like if they picked up a book they could find an easier name to say.
But where are they getting this book from, Shranja?
Like they have access to English books in China. They
Everything is
have libraries.
censored.
Hmm?
Everything is censored.
Not everything. Like they have Anne of Green Gables in China.
Yeah, but that's different. So everybody's gonna have a daughter and name her Anne or Diana.
I'm just saying they do have access to English books, but because of censorship, they don't have access to everything we do.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's just like a fact of life. A lot of people are doing that now, giving their kids English names to help them get by in school and the workplace.
Well, I mean, my child's future name is super English, like old Britain English.
What are you gonna name your kid?
Gregory's middle name, Ashford.
Oh, Ashford. You should give the first name as Lord, so he can be Lord Ashford.
You crazy.
I'm not crazy. I'm gonna give my kid the most Tamil name,
His
like
name's gonna be Lord Kelly.
no Lord Ashford Kelly.
But if his first name's Lord and his last name's Kelly, nobody's using the middle name in school or anywhere, so it's gonna be Lord Kelly.
Well, you can train him from young to tell people my name is Lord Ashford. No, I'm gonna give my kid the most like Sri Lankan Tamil name, like Bala Subramaniam.
What? Sorry. Pause. Say that again.
Bala Subramaniam.
That's one name?
That's one name. I want my kid to struggle. Okay, we're at the 1 hour mark. Oh yeah, Bala Subramaniam for a boy, and I don't know for a girl. Maybe I'll just give my name for a girl. I can do that.
And then how are you gonna tell the difference between you two?
We'll figure it out. Oh, Anika, what book are we reading next week?
We are reading Pemmican Wars, a girl named Echo, a girl called Echo. Something.
Girl Called Echo. So you guys are gonna stick around with us, get that book, and read it with us next week.
It's on Hoopla, so if you got a library card, you
If you
can
got a library card, get
you
that.
can read the ebook version.
All right, we're gonna sign off.
So show your thing one time for the people, them.
Oh,
Next time you'll see us wearing this, people.
our merchandise.
And our super exclusive. What am I doing? In our super exclusive crew necks.
Is Divi gonna join us for one?
That's me, and that's Shiranja. Wait, Divi, before you leave, are you gone yet? Divi, she wants to know which one you want to join us for. You can join us for my birthday, which is 2 streams from now. Or you can join us for, I forget what the other one was. So Anil's Ghost or that other one. I don't know, Divi, whichever one you want. I'm not going to tell you which one.
It's up to you. Which one speaks to you the most? I also want to mention Anika. Oh, Anika and Divi started up a new podcast with their colleague,
With our friend Adrian.
with their friend Adrian. It's called Melanin Marvels, and they talk about POC superheroes, and this goes on at least once a month. So if you guys haven't already checked it out, please do. It's a good podcast. Thank you, Sean.
So yes, apparently, don't quote me because every time I say this, the date changes. But our first episode of Melanin Marvels is supposed to go live on December 1st. If it doesn't, beat Divi up.
No, we don't encourage violence. Don't do that. Just keep an eye out
No
on
violence, just beat her up with your words of
with your
Divi,
word.
Divi.
Just keep an eye out on the Melanin Marvels Instagram account for the release date of the first podcast. And then, thanks guys for tuning in.
Yes, thank you. Much love. One love.
One love. One love.
It's soon Capricorn gang, so let's just hurry up and get the Sagittarius people out of here so that we can party it up like a true Capricorn. Because what did they say? A true goat. And who's a goat? Capricorns. Greatest of all time. Anyways, we out. Hush your mouth, Shredge. I see you rolling your eyes.
Bye. Have a good weekend, guys, or what's left of our weekend.
Catch you on the flip side.
Bye.
Bye.